All right, so good morning, everyone, and welcome to this course that we are starting from today. There was a slight battery glitch, therefore the delay. I hope my voice is audible to all of you. Yes, okay. So from today, we are going to start this new course uh, on a important topic that is regarding the PV pre-engineered buildings. All right, so I will tell you more about it. Let me just share one presentation with all of you. So I'll start the presentation and share my screen. So can you see the screen? Yes, is the screen visible? I hope it is visible and you can listen to my voice also, and you can, I mean, all the three things are there. You can see me, you can hear to my voice, and you can see the presentation. Good. So the course that we are going to start from today is yes. So the course that we are going to start from today is the design and detailing of PEB systems, and with special focus on industrial pre-engineered sheds. So today is our first session, and thank you all of you for joining this course. So we have got a good mix of practicing structural engineers, working professionals, independent consultants, faculty members. So we have a good uh, mix of participants. So it is, I'm sure that we will have a good time conducting this course. All right. So what are we going to discuss today? We will start with the basics. What do we mean by this PEB, pre-engineered building? What do we mean by this? Then why, or what is the reason behind the popularity of PEB sheds so much? Why do you see so much PEB industrial sheds being constructed these days? Wherever you go, anywhere you see, what you see is the pre-engineered industrial sheds being constructed. What are the various components of PEB sheds that we will discuss? Then a few things about configuration and geometry. So this is what we are going to discuss today. So first thing, what is PEB? So what do we mean by PEB? What is, this is an acronym. So what is the full form of PEB? Yes, tell me, what is the full form of PEB? So the full form of PEB we all know is pre-engineered building. Okay, so PEB stands for pre-engineered building. So if I just write it down, this is pre-engineered building. Okay, PEB. This is the full form. Now, what is the meaning of term pre-engineered? What is the meaning of this term pre-engineered? Can anyone throw some light on this? What do we mean by this pre-engineered word? Building we understand, but what do we mean by this pre-engineered? Yes, anyone? I hope my voice is audible to all of you. Is there any problem in listening to my voice? Hello. Okay. So pre-engineered would mean that we, as Mr. Dheeraj is saying, we engineer that. So what is the meaning of engineered? So engineered means that we are going to design this building. This building will be designed somewhere else. For any building, that is true. For any structure that you see, your buildings are designed at some design offices, isn't it? Nobody is designing the building at the site. So design anyway is done somewhere else. So design would be done not at the site, it is done somewhere else. What do we include more in engineered? So as Mr. Dheeraj is saying, this would be fabricated also somewhere else. So fabrication work would also happen somewhere else, and at the site only the erection work assembly and erection will happen. Okay, so at the site only assembly and erection will happen. Everything else is pre-engineered. So by word engineered, I would mean that design is done somewhere else, the fabrication part is somewhere else done, material procurement is done somewhere else, the fabrication is done somewhere else. Then these fabricated items are transported to site, and on site only assembly and erection takes place. So that is what we would mean by pre-engineered. All right. So as you can see, pre-engineered would mean that the planning is also of course done somewhere else. Design and fabrication is done beforehand, and on the site only the pieces are assembled together. Okay. So if you have seen those Lego, I don't know if you have you seen those Lego bricks? Very popular sort of a toy that you get for kids, Lego bricks. So similar to Lego bricks, what we do, we just assemble those Lego bricks uh, and we create structures, isn't it? So similarly, the pieces are fabricated somewhere else and they are just assembled together on the site. This is the basic concept of pre-engineered. So pre-engineering means in engineering, we will include the design also, and fabrication work also is done beforehand. So this is the meaning of pre-engineered. So pre-planned, pre-designed and prefabricated is technically pre-engineered. Okay. These days, what has happened is that there is a slight confusion in our minds that whenever we talk about this word PEB, okay, so these days the PEB, by PEB these days we only mean the sheds. So if you ask anyone PEB, so in their mind the first thing that comes is the industrial shed, isn't it? But that is actually not a proper that is actually a interpretation problem. Okay, so pre-engineered PEB does not mean industrial sheds. PEB means anything that is pre-engineered. That can be, let us say, a bridge can be pre-engineered. You always see RCC bridges that are being constructed these days. All those are pre-engineered bridges. Your structures can be pre-engineered. Your even these days roads, they are trying to make pre-engineered roads. So pre-engineered does not only mean industrial sheds, but these days the PEB word has become a generic or a common term for just the industrial sheds, isn't it? So that caution I am just giving to you, that PEB can mean any structure, any building that is pre-planned, pre-designed and prefabricated. Okay. So this thing should be clear in your minds. The other pre-engineered, as I just said, the other pre-engineered structures that you would see around you are pre-engineered buildings. I don't know whether you have seen any pre-engineered buildings. You might have seen those videos that some structure, some multi-story building in China was constructed in how many 10 days. There was a video, I think 1 year back I had seen that there was a building in China that was constructed in 10 days and it was a 20-story building. Okay, so the problem in interpretation over here is that it was just assembled on site in 10 days. Okay, just the puzzle pieces were fit together in 10 or 20 whatever days it took, but behind the scenes, obviously for several months, the design, the construction, the fabrication work would have been going on, isn't it? So when we say that the building was constructed in 10 days, it is just the assembly part that was done in 10 days. I hope you got this, got that point. So many structures these days, many buildings also are being constructed pre-engineered, prefabricated. You will see some industrial structures like silos also. Those are prefabricated and assembled on sites. Infrastructural projects like bridges, towers, etc. These are also pre-engineered or pre-designed, prefabricated and just assembled on site. These days, even roads are being pre-engineered. That means they will be casting their road panel somewhere else. They will be having a RCC road panel cast somewhere else, and on site, this precast road panel will be just laid on the sub-base or subgrade. So even pre-engineered roads are these days being uh, constructed. Not so much in India, but at least outside you will see pre-engineered roads also being uh, constructed. When we generally use RCC and when we use pre-engineered structures, what do we call them? There is a slightly different name that we use. If we are using RCC, concrete, and if we are doing the pre-engineering work, what do we call them usually? So we would call them precast. Yes. So we will call them precast. All right. So the common terminology used for RCC pre-engineered structures would be precast, but the concept remains same. So that is what I have written in the next point over here. So the equivalent in RCC is called as precast. Okay. So to summarize, pre-engineered would mean that the design and fabrication work will take place somewhere else, and on this site only the assembly and erection will take place. So any such structure will be called as pre-engineered. Okay. All right. Now, why, having understood this, why are these so popular? Why? What is the reason behind popularity of PV systems these days? Yes, one by one, if we can discuss. So, Mr. Dheeraj is saying faster execution. Again, the problem is faster execution only on site. Okay, faster execution only on site. So at the fabrication yard or at your workshop, you may take several months to fabricate those pieces in the workshop, isn't it? So the faster execution is only happening on the site. But that is also important, and I will come to that point. I will come to that point that uh, yes, one by one, I will just come to that. All those points that you have mentioned, there are a lot of correct points that everyone is mentioning. So I'll just cover all those points one by one. So these days, you will see that time is at a premium. Okay. And what happens is that these days the trend is to outsource the work as much as possible, and that too to a single agency. So what happens that earlier there would be one agency that would just fabricate your, let us say, steel structure. Then another agency would come that would put a sheeting and cladding to it. Then a third agency would come that will put, let us say, some turbo fans and some other items to your shed, etc., etc. So there would be several agencies that would be required to complete one project. So these days, because of time and because of the corporate culture, the big companies are not interested in liaising with multiple agencies, isn't it? So what they want, that all their work should be as far as possible, it should be done by a single agency. So they want turnkey solutions, isn't it? What is known as turnkey solutions. So turnkey solution would mean that your client would just turn the key and everything is ready, isn't it? That's why this term is evolved, turnkey. So turnkey means it should be as easy as just turning a key in the lock and everything else is done. So everyone wants a turnkey solution. So they look for agencies which can do everything for your structure, right from the designing work, right from designing to fabrication to assembly to erection to other items required in your PEB. Everything is done by one agency. So that way they have to deal with only one single point agency, and that becomes simpler for these corporate clients or even normal client. So time is at premium. We do not want to deal with multiple agencies, and we want to outsource our work as far as possible. Therefore, this pre-engineered concept is nowadays people find it very convenient. Land is at premium. So in the first point, time was premium. Premium means not easily available. Okay. Similarly, land is at a premium. All right. So no one wants to have their land occupied for the ongoing fabrication. So for example, if I draw a plan, and if this is the plan of your site, and let us say this is an industrial complex, and you have a lot of structures, lot of buildings all around. This is a big plant, let us say, big industrial plant. Some plant for, let us say, Mahindra and Mahindra. So they have a lot of buildings. Now they want to come up with a new shed over here. So this orange box that I'm showing, this is the new shed that they want. All right. This was a plan of their industrial complex. So if they want a new shed over here, and if they go for the conventional type of fabrication, what will happen is that the fabrication will have to take place in this place itself. So you will first procure the material, then a fabricator will come, then the fabricator will cut the pieces, weld the pieces, and all those things would be done on the site itself. All right. And that activity will go for, let us say, 2-3 months. So nobody these days is ready to occupy their, or nobody is ready these days to allow their land getting occupied for the fabrication work for months together. Okay. Nobody finds it convenient. And these days, with the industrial norms that have become very strict, it is all the more difficult to do all these things on the plant itself. All right. There are, in India, there is a lot of, I would say, awareness regarding the health and safety. So those who are working, those who are doing some actual work at some industry, they would have this experience that health and safety is a big issue these days. So nobody allows you to carry on with welding on site, because welding may lead to fire incidents. There are a lot of safety precautions that you have to take. So overall, what I'm trying to say is that doing work inside an industry for a very long period of time, that has become very difficult. Okay. And no industry allows you to do that. So therefore, people do not prefer this type of work to go on in their plants. So as I said, the strict work safety regulations make it difficult for the fabrication work to be carried on site. All right. That is very difficult. Then in case of PEB, I will just, I know you might not be able to read this, but I'll just read this point and I'll try to explain you one thing. In case of PEB, you can do actually parallel activities. So how you can do parallel activities? So if you were going to do by the conventional method, then what would happen? And let us say this is a industrial complex. You don't have much space anywhere. So what you would have to do first, that you will first have to maybe do your footings. Maybe you will have to do first footings. Then you would call your agency. That agency will do the fabrication work, and then that agency will do the erection and assembly work. So basically, civil footings, this will be followed by the fabrication work. Okay. So most of you must have heard about, or must we all have read about the project scheduling and all those things. So these activities in a conventional fabrication cannot run in parallel. So first you will have to do civil footings on site. After completion of civil footing, then your fabrication work can start. Why? Because land is at a premium. You don't have any extra space at your site. So parallel activities cannot be done. But if you are going to do PEB, what happens is that civil footing work you can start, and parallelly the fabrication work starts at the fabrication shop or workshop of your PEB supplier, isn't it? So civil footing work starts at the site, and the fabrication work starts at the workshop or the fabrication yard of the supplier. So these two activities can then go in parallel. All right. So these two activities, because they can go in parallel, you can end up saving time. I hope you got this point. Okay. So because of this, because you can do the parallel activities in this way, again, this becomes very I would say preferable. This pre-engineered building become more preferable because parallel activities can be planned. Okay, so this was the next point. Then nowadays, because of increased automation, because of good welding practices that have evolved, and because of good welding machines that are available these days, the entire process of fabrication uh, can be completed very quickly. Okay, so because of good machines and because of the sliding welding tools that are available, the complete process of fabrication has been streamlined, resulting into a quicker and faster fabrication, of course, at the fabrication yard or at the workshop of your PV supplier. So this entire fabrication activity can be completed in a quicker way, and the tools have become also relatively cheaper. And I have deliberately included this point that there is a belief that PEV is cheaper. Somebody had mentioned this point in the right now also. No, nobody mentioned this. So there is a belief that PEB is cheaper, but that is not accurate. So therefore, I have said that not accurate. PEB is not cheap. I mean, if you compare the tonnage, if you compare the tonnage, then the tonnage can be almost equivalent to a general conventional structure that you plan. Okay, so PEB being cheaper, at least tonnage wise, is not true. You can achieve uh, you can achieve lighter or almost equivalent structures with conventional systems also. Okay, so PEB cheaper, not true. So therefore, I have written that there is a belief, even though that is not accurate, that PEB is cheap. Other points, what have been mentioned is Raksha ma'am is saying that the structures are light. Again, the light structures, not very. I would not agree a lot with it. That PEB is light. Quality is maintained. Mr. Prashant is saying yes. Quality, you can say quality is maintained because it is being done in the fabrication shop. But these days, again, that again depends on the agency that is doing the fabrication work, isn't it? There are some agencies, because what has happened is because of the popularity of PEB structures nowadays, you have got hundreds of agencies that are doing PEB fabrication, isn't it? Just like a pawn shop that you have at every corner of your street, similarly you will see hundreds of PEB fabricators and PEB suppliers in every city. So quality being maintained depends on the agency involved. We have seen in our projects very poor fabrication work being done by the PEB supplier. So quality depends on the agency that is doing the work. Mr. Vijay is saying that the structures are temporary. Yes, so that is an overall, I would say, advantage of using steel structures, that you can basically, if you create some steel structure, you can dismantle it and you can take it somewhere else, isn't it? So you can dismantle a complete PEB, or sorry, you can dismantle a complete steel structure and you can move it to some other place. All those things are possible, isn't it? So I would say Mr. Vijay is saying temporary structures, that he had said as an advantage of using PEB. So I'll say that advantage is for all steel structures. I will not use the word temporary. I will say that the steel structures can be very easily modified, okay, modified or dismantled. And they can be dismantled, they can be also reused, as Mega is saying. Correct. Then she is saying, Mega is saying that the wastage is less. That is another advantage that she is saying for the pre-engineered structures. So that wastage again will depend on the careful planning of your members. Okay, so the wastage part will depend on the careful planning of the uh, member cross sections. Then Mr. Vijay is saying another advantage of PEB is easy transportation and erection. Again, the transportation and erection, it depends from type to type. It's not always easy. The transportation may not be always easy, and the erection work also may not be always easy. All right. So that is again, that depends from project to project, from site to site. So are we clear with all this? Okay. So generally what we would be doing is that in the fabrication shop, so there will be a fabrication shop or workshop. So in fabrication yard or workshop, this is of the PEB supplier. Of the PEB supplier, you will be basically making your members. All those members, whatever members you are making, all those members generally are welded. Okay, so all the members that you fabricate in the workshop or in the yard are welded together. So these are welded, and then let us say this was piece A, this was piece B. You weld these pieces, sorry, you create these individual pieces by welding the elements, and then you bring them by transportation. So you transport them, and on site, how you connect them? On site, how will you connect these two members? Let us say this A and B has to be connected. So on site, these two pieces would be typically always be connected with what? So we will always connect them with bolting. Okay. So on site, we will always connect them by bolting. This thing has to be kept in mind. So this A piece and this B piece on site, it will be assembled by bolting each other. So the beauty of PEB systems is that we do not want any sort of welding on site. So no welding on site. Okay. Remember this thing. Why do we not want to allow welding on site? Why don't we want to allow, or why welding on site is not preferred? Hello. Yes, tell me. So welding on site is not preferred because on site, first of all, welding may not be safe. Welding may not be safe on site. Why? Because there are many industries or many, I would say, many places where you cannot do welding because of the risk of fire. So if there is anything that is inflammable, your fire may, because of your welding, there might be an incident of fire very easily. So welding may not be safe on site. Then you might not be able to do welding difficult at height. Okay, because try to understand that welding has to be done in situ. In situ means, let us say this is my shed. All right, this is the shed that I am constructing, and let us say that this is one piece, and this has to be connected to this piece on site. All right, so now you have fabricated this piece A, and this piece B you have fabricated, and now you bring it to site. This is the elevation, of course. This was 10 meters. So now what will happen if you want to connect A and B by welding at site? What you will have to do? You will have to take your welding machine. You will have to take your welding machine to this 10-meter height, and then you will have to weld it on site. So welding always has to be in situ. Okay, so your welding machine will have to be carried to such heights. That in itself becomes difficult. So we do not prefer welding on site. Bolting on site is preferred, that you can just hold these pieces together and you can quickly bolt them and you can make them integral. So doing welding on site is difficult at heights and at odd places. Welding may not be safe also, and then you may not be able to achieve the proper quality control. So welding on site, you may not be able to achieve uh, proper, I would say no proper quality control. Okay. You might have seen that in our IS 800 2007 also, when the welding is done on site, the safety factor goes up to 1.5. And if the welding is done on the workshop or in the workshop, the safety factor, partial safety factor is given as 1.25, isn't it? So higher safety factors are given for welding done on site because quality control is not proper. So the entire concept behind our pre-engineered systems would be that whatever welding has to be done will be done in the workshop. We fabricate our pieces in the workshop, we transport our pieces to site, and then we assemble on site together by bolting. Okay. Keep this thing in mind. All right. So we go back to our presentation. Then yes, so having understood this, let us see some of big agencies, pre-engineered agencies involved in India that are doing works. So can some of you name some pre-engineered building agencies in India, some big suppliers? You might have heard some names. Yes, Mr. Dheeraj is saying Tata BlueScope. Tata BlueScope is only manufacturing. To my mind, Tata BlueScope only does the manufacturing work. It will manufacture your sheets, it will manufacture your purlins, it will manufacture your deck sheets, but it is not doing the complete assembly and erection work, isn't it? To best of my knowledge. Bajaj, Mr. Prashant is mentioning Bajaj. Oh, I didn't know Bajaj is also involved in PV. I didn't know. Mr. Dheeraj is saying that they had Tata BlueScope for one of their projects. Interesting. So were Tata BlueScope doing the entire erection and assembly work also on site? I don't know. Yeah. Okay. So they did submit the quotation, Mr. Dheeraj is saying, but they didn't do the work finally. Okay. Mr. Vijay is saying Jindal. Again, Jindal is a manufacturer. Jindal will manufacture your plates. Jindal will manufacture your I sections or parallel flange sections. Jindal does the manufacturing for deck sheets, but Jindal is not uh, involved in the erection fabrication work of projects, to best of my knowledge. So Jindal, Tata, all these are big manufacturers, but these are not. They do not get involved in the erection fabrication work. All right. So some big PB suppliers, what I have come across, one of them is Zamil Steel. So Zamil Steel is one of the oldest PB suppliers in India. That is, I think this Zamil Steel is a Saudi-based company. You may correct me if I'm wrong, but to the best of my knowledge, Zamil Steel is a Saudi Arabia-based company, and they are pioneers in pre-engineered building system design, erection, fabrication. So this is one name that comes to my mind. Then you have got Kirby. Kirby is another big name. I think they might be one of the biggest PB pre-engineered building system supplier in India. Then we have got Interarch is a big company. Everest is a big company. I have also included Tata BlueScope, but I have never seen Tata BlueScope doing projects as such. Okay, so these are some of the big PEB suppliers in India. So all these companies that you see over here, what they do is that they would be doing the complete planning. Okay, they would be doing the complete designing in-house. Everything is happening in-house. Then they will be doing the complete material procurement. Then they would be doing the complete fabrication, and then they would be doing the complete erection and assembly, and finally they would be doing the complete commissioning. So right from planning to designing to procurement, fabrication, erection, assembly, commissioning, everything is done by these companies. All right, so they will provide you the, I would say, complete turnkey solutions. All right, good. So these people also have a lot of requirement for structural designers. Okay, so these people also have a lot of requirement for structural designers for their in-house design teams. Mega is asking about commissioning. Commissioning means that once everything is done, then if there is some testing to be involved, let us say some stability certificate to be issued, some testing on site to be done, whether your system is behaving properly or not, whether everything is correct or not, or whether if you are doing some industrial building which is having some equipment load, etc., then they would be also doing the stability assessment, everything. So that comes under commissioning. For some structures you may have to carry load tests also. Okay, so they will do all those things. So by commissioning I mean that part. Okay, so everything is done by these agencies. Very good. So then the important components of your pre-engineered systems. So whenever from now I will say PEB, you might have understood this, that pre-engineered means anything that is designed, planned, fabricated beforehand in the workshop or in a fabrication yard. So any of that thing we will call as PEB. But from now on, for this course at least, whenever I say PEB, I would basically refer to a particular type of section that is the most commonly used type of section, and that is called as this type of a three-plate section. Okay, you must have understood that anything can be pre-engineered and pre-designed and prefabricated, but the common sections that are used by these pre-engineered agencies are these three-plate sections. So what is meaning of this three-plate section? Three-plate section means that I have this top plate. This is called as a flange plate. This is called as a flange plate. And this is called as a web plate. So these three plates together, we weld them together to make a continuous three-plate section. So generally all your PEB suppliers or all your PEB structures use this type of a section. Okay, most common section that they use would be this type of a three-plate section. In addition to this, they may use some hot rolled sections also. They may use some hollow sections also. They may use some cold form sections also. But primarily, the three-plate section is the most common section that is used. All right. So what we are discussing the components of a PEB shed now. That is the main topic that we have. And mainly a moment frame portal system is prepared using these plate section. Okay, so the general assembly is, or it consists of this moment frame portal system, and the most common section that you use for creating this would be your three plate section that I just mentioned. So three plate section will have a flange, and will have a web plate. Now this section can be used as a beam also. This same section will be used as a column also. So when you put it vertically, this will be a column. When you put it horizontally, this will be a beam. So the same three plate section is being used for column application also, for beam application also. So before we proceed, let us try to understand what is the meaning of this moment. What is the meaning of this moment frame? Okay, because this term you will quite often use during our discussions. So what is the meaning of this moment frame portal? Let us try to understand that. So what does a portal mean? A portal will mean that it will consist of a vertical element, and a simple portal will include one horizontal element supported on two vertical elements, isn't it? That is the meaning of portal. And when I say a moment frame, or even when I use this word portal, it would mean that these horizontal elements and vertical elements, how are they going to be connected to each other? Let us say this is my beam element. We also call it as rafter. The technical term that we will use for in case of pre-engineered systems would be, or pre-engineered sheds would be, rafter. And let us say this is my column element. So together, how are these beams and columns connected? So this support over here, this support will be which type of a support? Yes, this support will be which type of support? So this support will be a rigid support. This support that we will create will be a rigid support. What do we mean by rigid support? Most of you know this answer. What do we mean by a rigid support? Hello. So rigid support means, and if this I call it as fixed support. Okay, let us Mr. Vijay is saying fixed. Okay, if this is fixed and if this is rigid, what is the difference between these two? Can anyone tell me? Let us say at the base, we want to create a fixed support, and at the beam column junction, we want to create a rigid support. What is the difference between rigid support and fixed support? So what is the meaning of fixed support? That at fixed support, there is no rotation. Okay, at fixed support, as Mr. Dheeraj is saying, there is no rotation. Zero rotation you will get. So zero rotation between your column and the support system. In case of rigid support, there is rotation. Okay, there is rotation, but what happens is, there is rotation, but how it differs, that there is no relative rotation. Okay, there is rotation, but there is no relative rotation. So no relative rotation means that the angle between your members, what Mr. Vijay is saying, that the angle between your members before and after the load application remains the same. So for example, the angle was 90° right now between my beam and my column. So after load application also, the angle would remain the same. So perhaps your assembly would deform something like this, and over here the assembly would deform something like this, let us say. So before and after, before angle was 90°, after also the angle will remain 90°. Okay, so rotation happens, but rigidity means that there is no relative rotation. Because of this, because there is no relative rotation, the moments are, or there is no, you can basically easily divide the moments at this, or what we say is summation of moments is 0. Okay, because there is no relative rotation, the overall summation of the moments at this joint will be 0. So if you sum up all the moments at each member which is connecting at this joint, the summation will be 0, and that is what is the basis of our moment distribution method also, isn't it? So this is our rigid joint. Beam column joint will be rigid joint, and the column base plate, let us say this is my base plate. So this column base plate joint will depend. It may be fixed in some cases. We may also have something like a pin support in some cases. Okay. But essentially, the beam column joint will be rigid. So this type of a system, we call it as the portal frame. So whenever I use this word portal frame, it would mean that my beams and columns are rigidly connected with each other. Is it clear? Okay. Now, when we connect it rigidly, how does this take loads? So the load transfer, when these are connected rigidly, how does the load transfer take place? So let us say this is my beam and this is my column. So how will the load transfer take place? We all know that for gravity loads, if there is a gravity load, my bending moment will be something like this. Okay. This type of bending moment we get. So the rigid joints develop moments, and those moments are equally taken by the column and the beam, and that's how your system develops resistance to gravity loads. If this was a pin joint, then what would have happened? If there was a pin joint at the base, then what would have happened? So in case of pin joint, you would have got a bending moment like this. We all know. So you would have got a bending moment like this. Okay, zero bending moment at the base. Something like this, isn't it? All right. In case of pin supports at the base. All right. Now, how are my lateral loads taken by this portal? How is lateral load taken by this portal? So when my portal frame is subjected to lateral loads, how are lateral loads resisted? So to resist lateral loads again, in case of in case of lateral loads again, the bending moment diagram will be something like this. Okay. So this is how my lateral loads are being resisted. So you will get a sagging moment at the one end of beam, hogging moment at the other end of the beam, and this type of a bending moment diagram, biaxial bending in case of columns. Similarly, when the lateral load reverses the direction, your bending moments will be reversed. So what is happening is that the lateral gravity and lateral loads are being resisted by the moment frame. Okay. Mr. Prashant is asking, in case of pin support, does the moment become higher? Higher where you are asking? You mean higher at the column top? Yes, it will become higher. It will become higher because there is no movement at the base now, so everything gets shifted up. So it does get higher. Okay. Now, did we understand the behavior of moment frame system? Okay. Did we understand this behavior of moment frame system? Yes, no? Hello. So this moment frame system, we also call it as the portal frames. Okay. This we will also call it as the portal frame. Now, if I have a system, let us say let us take one more system, which is, let us assume that my beams are simply supported on the column. All right. So now let us assume that I have a beam which is simply supported on the column. That means this joint cannot resist any moment. So this joint and this joint is simply supported. Now, if I apply gravity loads, how will this gravity load be resisted? So what will happen? That you will get a bending moment diagram in beam like this, pure sagging, isn't it? Nothing, no moment gets transferred to your column, and directly just the axial loads get transferred to your columns. In earlier case also axial loads were getting transferred, but in addition the columns were subjected to moments also, and that's how your overall moment was being resisted. Now in this case, when I have a pin support assembly, so my beam is simply supported to my column, let us say. So in that case, my beam takes the entire bending moment and none of them can be transferred to columns. Okay. Now, when this type of a system, beam is simply supported, and when this type of a system is subjected to lateral loads, what happens? When this type of a system is subjected to lateral loads, what will happen? Can anyone tell me? You understood the question, isn't it? What will happen now? So in this case, this is not a stable system actually. This will become not a very stable system because the load from beam, it is not able to transfer it to columns, isn't it? So your columns are sort of a vertical cantilever, but that too, when your beam is able to transfer the loads to columns. So in this case, that will not be possible. And therefore, this is not a very stable system, not preferred for lateral loads. Okay. So when you have beams simply supported on the columns, this system becomes unstable. And to do away with the instability, what do you do? To do away with this instability, what you have to do? So you have to add another element that is called as, what do we call this element? So this element, we call it as the, most of you know, this type of element, we call it as the bracing. Okay. So what is this bracing doing? So this bracing is basically helping you to take the lateral load. How will it help you in taking the lateral load? So whenever a lateral load is acting, it will be taken by this bracings. Okay. Let us say this is bracing 1, this is bracing 2. Now under this lateral load L, let us say under this lateral load L, which of the bracing will be under tension and which of the bracing will be under compression? Yes, tell me. If the direction of lateral load is this, which of these two bracings will be under compression and which will be under tension? So we understand that for this direction of lateral load, the bracing number 1 will be in tension and the bracing number 2 will be in compression. Okay. When I reverse my lateral load, and when the lateral load acts like this, then what happens? So in this case, the actions will be reversed. Now my bracing 1 is in, oh sorry, yeah, 1 was in tension, 2 was in compression. Now my bracing 1 is in compression and bracing 2 is in tension. Do we agree with this? Okay. So the purpose of providing a X bracing, this is called as a X bracing system. So the advantage of providing an X bracing is that when the lateral load is from one direction, one bracing is in tension, the other is in compression, and when the lateral load direction reverses, the compression tension direction reverses. So generally when we provide bracings, the basic principle that we would be adopting that we would be designing our bracings to be effective only in tension. That is a point I will come to later on also. So generally the bracings that we will design would be effective only in tension. Okay. Why so? I'll come to it later on. So in a simply supported frame, I will say over here, in a simply supported frame, who is taking the gravity load? In a simply supported frame that I just explained to you, which components are taking the gravity loads? So gravity loads are being taken by your beam column system. Okay. And which components are taking your lateral load? So for lateral load, you will have to introduce bracings. So remember this thing. Okay. Compared to this, in a moment frame system, both the gravity and the lateral load can be resisted by your frame alone. So if you have a moment frame, you do not need anything additional. Any additional system is not required to resist your loads. So both gravity and lateral loads can be resisted by your moment frame system. In simply supported frames, where your beams are simply supported on columns, gravity loads can be taken by beam columns, but for lateral loads, you will have to introduce bracings. So is this clear to all of you? Yes, is this understood? So why we are discussing all these things? Why we are discussing all these things? Because in our PEB shed, I'll just come to this. This becomes the essential portal system. Do you get it? Hello. So this becomes the portal. This is the primary structural system of our PEB shed. Okay. Clear? When we use truss, if you have seen workshops or if you have seen industrial sheds or sheds which use trusses. Okay. So in trusses, let us say you use this truss system. Okay. And you use some column. So this column truss system that you see, this is essentially a type of simply supported system. Okay. This column truss system that you see, this is essentially a type of simply supported system. Clear to all of you? Have you seen these types of truss systems? Hello. Yes, I think you might have seen it. So truss column systems are essentially your simply supported systems. And what we are going to discuss in our industrial sheds, pre-engineered systems, those would be your moment frame portals. So this is how a portal would look like. So this portal, these joints are rigid, and the joint at the base, it will depend. It may be pin also, it may be fixed also. So that will depend on the some structural, I would say, decisions or design strategies. So are we clear with this concept? Meaning of portal and moment frames? Yes, any confusion till this? Any confusion to anyone? Okay, so now I will go back. I wanted to explain this point clearly. Now we will go back and yes. Okay, so the components of industrial shed that we are going to discuss, would be primary structural system. So what is the meaning of primary structural system? These are the components of your PEB industrial shed. Okay, so if you understand the design and detailing of these components, basically you will understand the entire design and detailing of your PEB shed. So any PEB shed, industrial shed that you will come across, that will be having some primary structural system, which will comprise of portal frames, as I just explained. So in addition, you will have some secondary structural system. So secondary structural system would mean purlins, girds, and eave struts. Okay, what is the meaning of purlins, girds, and eave struts? I'll just, I think I'll go back, and in this diagram, I will try to explain. So this, what you see on your screens, can you see this diagram on your screen? Hello. Okay, so this system that you see, this, which I am highlighting by blue color, this will be what? This will be called as what? Yes, tell me. This blue color highlighted system will be what? So this will be called as your primary structural system. Okay. This is your portal frame or primary structural system. In addition to this, just hold on. Yes. In addition to this is my primary structural system or the portal frame. Then now that I'm highlighting over here, this element at the roof. Okay. This element at the roof, what do we call this element at the roof as? Yes, tell me. So this element at the roof, we will call it as purlin. Okay. I hope all of you are aware with these terms. So why this purlin is required? To cover our industrial shed with sheets. So basically, if you see, this would be my portal. I'm trying to draw a sectional view. This brown colored lines that I have drawn is my portal. Then you need to cover it. Okay, you need to wrap it up. So to wrap it up, we will wrap it up with sheet. So this green that I'm drawing is my sheet. Now to support my sheet on this portal, I'll be using a secondary system, and these orange colored elements that I'm drawing would be called as purlins. Is it clear? So what is the role of purlins? The role of purlins is to support my sheeting. Are you clear with this? Hello. Okay. Similarly, I also have to wrap up, or I also have to cover my structure on the sides. So when we cover our structure on the side, this covering, we call it as the sheeting. So this covering on the, sorry, cladding. This covering on the sides, when we provide it, we use the word cladding. And this covering, when we provide on the top, we use this as roof sheeting. They are one and the same thing. They use the same type of material. They use the same type of members, elements. Sheet element is the same thickness, everything is same. Just we use two different names. When we put that sheet on the top, we will call it as the roof sheeting. When we put that sheet on the horizontal vertical faces, we will call it as cladding. Okay. Why we are covering our structure? Because we don't want to have it bare frame. What you see in this diagram right now is a bare frame structure. So you don't want to keep your structure bare frame. You will be wrapping it up, just like we wear clothes. So similarly, you are going to provide clothes to your structure. Okay, so that clothing up, when we do it on the top, we call it as the roof sheet. When we do it on the sides, that is called as the cladding. And then the elements that we provide to connect our cladding with our column, let us say, this element we call it as the girts. So the technical name that we use for this is girt, GIRTS, girts. Okay, is it clear? I hope this point is clear to all of you. Yes, no? So same element when we provide at the top, it is called as purlin. And same element when we provide on the vertical face, then it is called as girts. Generally, purlins and girts are same cross sections. We will use some cold form sections, maybe a Z section or a C section, but essentially they are same. Just because they are used at different locations, we give a different term to it. So purlins and girts. Any confusion till this point? Hello? No. So this purlins and girts. Then another element that you see over here, at the top, I just highlight it using a highlighter. So that is called as this element. Generally, what you see at the top surface, this element is generally called as the eave strut. Don't worry, I will come to this in detail later on also. So this element that we provide at the top point of my column over here in this direction, this is called as the eave strut. All right. So this eave strut, the purlins and the girts, the purlins, the girts, the eave struts, these together are called as the secondary structural system. So one was primary structural system that consists of the portal, main portal. Then this purlin, girts, eave strut, these are called as secondary structural system. Are you clear with this? Hello. Okay. So these are just some common terms that we would be using. Everyone clear? Okay, good. So I'll just go ahead and then we will come back to this picture. So we have understood what is the primary structural system, portal frame. We have understood what is the secondary structural system, that will consist of purlins, girts, eave struts. Then we will use another term, subsystems. Okay, structural subsystems. That means they do not form part of your main system, but they are equally important for your industrial shed. So these will consist of bracings. Bracings we have already discussed. Then it will also have jack beams. All these terms I will discuss as we move ahead. So I'm not discussing right now, but we will discuss as we move ahead. End walls and canopies. So these are some of the examples of structural subsystems that we might have to use. I will explain them, all of them, picture by picture, and things will become clear to you. So don't worry right now. We'll go into their details also. Then gantry girders, if provided, this will again be an important component of your industrial shed that you will have to design. So in this course, we are going to do the design of a gantry girder, and we will design sheds with and without gantry girders also. Okay. Then after this, skin panels and accessories. So as I just explained, you have to wrap up or you have to provide clothes to your sheds. So those are called as skin panels. When you provide clothing to your structure. And then there are some accessories. So those accessories we will discuss. So the skin panels will be roofing panels, side claddings, soffit panels, etc., etc. I will come to all of these. Mr. Syed is asking, some pre-engineered buildings are used for parking of vehicles. Yes. So is there any question associated, or you are just mentioning it as a point? Okay, Mr. Syed is asking, when some PEB systems are used for parking of vehicles, what components are used in that? So it will have a primary structural system. Of course, it will have. It will have a secondary system also, because it will have some purlins, etc., to provide sheeting. And then it might have some bracings, and it might have some roofings. So in parking, there may not be side claddings, but it will have a roofing, it will have purlins, it will have a main portal, and it might have bracing systems. So these types of components you may have to use for parking structures. Okay. Of course, it will depend from the type of depend on the type of parking system that you are using. Then building accessories, some architectural accessories like doors, windows, frame openings, rolling shutters, louvers, etc. These also form a part of your industrial sheds. We would be discussing all these, don't worry. Then flooring systems. In some sheds, you may have to provide some intermediate floors also. So for example, this is my shed. This is the cross section of my shed. Now you need an intermediate floor at this height, let us say. Okay, you need an intermediate floor at this height. So then this height will be called as a mezzanine floor. Okay, this may usually be called as a mezzanine floor. So you may have to develop a complete flooring solution for this. So that is the meaning of mezzanine floors. In some industrial sheds, you may have to provide walkways for people to move around. So those walkways may be suspended from the roof, and your people may walk around these walkways for inspection purpose, etc. So these are called as walkways. Platforms mean that you may have to create some working platforms for some equipments, or again for some inspection purposes. So that are called as platforms. So all these come under flooring systems. So you may have some mezzanine floors, you may have to provide some walkways, platforms, etc. Are we clear? Any confusion with this? Okay. And then you will have some foundation system. So that in itself is a complete design problem. So your substructural system may consist of isolated footings or pile foundations or raft, etc. So we will not go in this course, we will not be discussing foundation systems, because that in itself is a complex and a vast topic. So we will be limiting our discussion till base plate. Okay. The column base plate will be the last point that we will design and detail. So during this course, we will be talking about the design and detailing of all these components: primary structural system, secondary structural system, subsystems, gantry girders. For skin panels, we will not be doing any design as such, but we will be trying to figure out what sizes you require. For doors, windows, again, there will be no design that we would be doing, but we would be trying to figure out what size you need to provide. Okay. All these things we will be covering. Any confusion till this point? Hello. Very good. So we come back to this slide that we had discussed. This is your portal. Quintessential means this is the most commonly, or which is seen everywhere. That is the meaning of this word quintessential. So this is your portal that you will see everywhere. This is your main structural system. And as I just explained, that these will be rigidly connected with each other. Generally, we will call this as a rafter. So in our PEB terms or PEB terminology, we will call this as a rafter. So we will not call this as a beam, but we will call this as a rafter, and this we will call it as a column. Okay. So rafter is nothing but your column. Understand that. Clear? Okay. So now your primary structural system can be having a dual slope. What does a dual slope mean? Dual slope means that your system can be like this. This is your structural system. So this is having a dual slope. That means slope is over here also. Slope is over here also. That is meaning of dual slope. So examples of dual slope are like this. You can see this is the center line. This is the center line. So you have a slope over here. Of course, you will have a slope over here also, but that has not been drawn to save space. Okay. The overall span would be from here to here. So when I say what is the span of your shed, so this is the span. Okay. You need to understand over here one thing, that when we provide a truss system, when we provide a truss, let us say this is my truss. What does this riser of the truss help you to do achieve? This is called as riser, isn't it? So what does this riser help you in doing? Hello. Can anyone tell me the importance of this riser in a truss? Yes, anyone? Correct. So Mr. Dheeraj is saying when this riser gets increased, basically the lever arm gets increased. Because of the increase in lever arm, you will see that the tension and compression in these members reduce. So it's just like increasing the depth of your beam. Okay. So when we increase the riser, it helps you in reducing the compression tension forces in your top chord and bottom chord. And that finally helps you in achieving lighter section sizes. So therefore the riser is an important concept in your truss. So generally the risers are kept equal to 1.5 to I would say, or people, when you see the code, they also say 1/4, 1/5 to 1/6. Okay, so you want a deep riser actually. What it means is that if this is 20 meters, okay, if this is 20 meters, then this half will be how much? 10 meters. So your code asks you to provide a riser of 1/4 is too much. 1/4 no one will provide. So your code will ask you to provide a riser of 1/5 to 1/6. That means your riser will be 10/5 to 10/6. How much this will be? So around 1.6 meters, isn't it? So the riser is around 1.6 to 2 meters. Are we getting this? Why did we require this riser? Remember, because our system was a truss system. This was sort of a simply supported system. So what was happening was that you were getting a bending moment diagram like this. Now in this bending moment diagram, the maximum bending moment was at the center. So to resist this bending moment diagram, you require a greater riser, so that when you convert this bending moment into tension compression, when this bending moment gets converted into tension compressions, the values of these compression tensions would be lower because of the higher lever arm. So that was the reason why we required greater risers over here. If you compare this system with our portals, in our portals, we don't require this type of a riser, isn't it? We can provide a flat looking portal also, because this portal is resisting bending by development of internal movement resistance of this cross section. All right. So in our portals, we actually do not require any riser. Is this clear? Is this understood to everyone? In portals, we do not technically require risers, all right, because the load is being resisted by the development of internal bending moments or internal moment resistances. So we technically do not require any riser, but still we have to provide some riser. Why? Why do we still have to provide some slope? Because for the water drainage, correct. So because we want to drain out the water, we cannot allow water to stagnate. So for water drainage, and of course your slope will help you structurally also. So for water drainage, we have to provide some slope. So an industry standard slope that we provide is 1 in 10. So that will be a standard slope that we will provide in any PEB shed that you see. This is the standard that is followed. Okay. So a slope of 1 in 10 we will provide. So 1 in 10 would mean that if my span of my PV system was 20 meters, how much would be my riser over here? How much would be my riser over here? Yes, tell me. Riser. 1 in 10 would mean what would be my riser for a 20-meter shed? So it would be 1 meter. My riser would be 1 meter. How 1 meter? You will take half, 10. 10 is half, and because you wanted a 1 in 10 slope, so 10 by 10, 1 meter. So you understand that while in truss, I might have required a slope of 2 meters to 1.6 meters riser, that is greatly reduced to around 1 meter in PEB. Okay. Are we clear? Okay. So dual slope means slope in this direction also, slope in this direction also. This is the meaning of dual slope. Some more examples of dual slope I have taken over here. So you will see a dual slope with a central column over here. So my shed is going like this. I have a central column over here. Generally, when my total building width, it becomes more than around 30 meters. Generally speaking, it is suggested to have an internal column for achieving greater economy. All right. So when my total building width becomes more than 30, it is desired or it is desirable to have an internal column. Over here, how many internal columns will I have in this case? So here I will have 2 internal columns. Okay. And again, like this, I will have 3 internal columns over here. Are you clear with this type of systems? So all are called as dual slopes. One with no internal column, then having a central internal column, 2 internal columns, 3 internal columns, and so on. So around a span of around 20-25 meters is an economic span. Then beyond that, you should think of providing some internal columns. Clear? Okay. Then, so this is an example of dual slope. Then this is an example of single slope or mono slope. So you might have to have single slope structures sometimes. These single slope structures primarily are required when you want the water drainage in one side only. Okay. In dual slope, what will happen? If there is a, yes, in dual slope, your water will fall on both sides. I hope we agree. So when there is when rainfall comes, then water will drain out from both sides. So water will fall on both sides of your structure. In a dual slope, we all understand that water will fall only on one side, isn't it? So when we have a dual slope, when we have a single slope, water will fall only on one side. So generally, the main criteria behind deciding a single slope is when you want to when you want to have a fixed direction of water drainage. When you don't, let us say, want water drainage in both directions, you want water drainage to happen primarily only in one direction, then you go for monoslopes or single slopes. So single slope, that is the deciding criteria generally. Are we clear? Hello? Okay. So for example, if I provided a dual slope over here, what would be the problem? If I provided dual slope over here, what do you think would be the problem in this case? Let us say this was an existing building and you provided a dual slope. What will the problem? The problem would be that when during water rainfall, this water will be drained out, but then this water will stagnate over here. Now then you will have to either provide some downtake pipes at this location. Even after downtake pipes, there will always be a problem of water seepage at this junction, and then it can lead to problems in your main structure also. So in this type of a system, you wanted that your water should quickly drain off away from your structure, main building. So therefore you provided a single slope. Okay. So generally the deciding reason behind providing a single slope, or what we call also called as a monoslope, is this decision that we want to have our water traveling in a particular direction. Clear to everyone? Hello. Otherwise, if you see that structurally monoslopes or single slopes are less efficient. Okay, structurally monoslopes or single slopes are less efficient systems as compared to dual slope systems. Okay, so if given a choice, we will always go for dual slope systems because it is structurally more efficient, but only in these cases when we have to make our water travel in a particular direction, the roof drainage water, if we want to travel it in a particular direction, then we will provide monoslopes. I hope I have made myself clear. So this was a monoslope. This is a monoslope with no column. This is monoslope with one internal column, with two internal columns, three internal columns, and so on. Okay, from where I have taken all these pictures? So all these pictures I have taken from Zamil Steel Handbook. So Zamil Steel, as I told you, it is a big company, a very old company, almost 50 to 60 years old company, which are market leaders, who are market leaders in PV systems. So they have developed a wonderful handbook where they have included all these pictures. So whatever pictures you see in this presentation, I have taken those pictures from this Zamil Steel handbook. I will share that handbook on the WhatsApp group. Okay. Is it clear? Okay. Good. So single slope is done. Monoslope. Then this type of a system you can also provide. This is called as a multi-dual slope arrangement. So when the spans are very large and you cannot have a system like this, because what will happen if you have a system like this, for very large spans, this riser becomes very high. Okay. If you have, let us say, a span of 100 meters. Now for 100 meters, if you provide 1 in 10 slope, it will become a 5-meter riser. So this in itself becomes very large. So in very large spans, what you do is that you provide multiple dual slopes. Okay. Is it clear what I'm trying to tell you? So in this case, you are able to limit your independent risers, isn't it? So if you had a 100-meter building, instead of providing a single dual slope, you provide multiple dual slope to control the riser heights. So if this was 50 meters, then you can control this by providing a riser of 2.5 meters. So basically you save on the riser heights. Okay. The very important problem in multi-slope systems is the very important problem in multi-slope systems is, number one, you will have to have internal columns. Okay. Mr. Dheeraj is asking, why can't we have multiple dual slopes without internal columns? It becomes that system in itself becomes very difficult to manage. Okay. You can have a system like this also, where you have slopes like this, where you have columns only over here. But then this structurally, this point becomes very weak. It will be subjected to high deflections. All those things will come up. Okay. So therefore, if you are giving this shape, then it is required to have a support element over here. Or else you go for a complete slope like this. Now the problem what Megha and Syed is asking, the problem in these multi slopes are that here there is a problem of water drainage, as correctly pointed out. So what will happen, that my water will drain out over here. From here my water drains out, my water drains out, my water drains out. Now over here, this portion, I will have a water drainage issues. Now remember, this is the internal portion of my building this time. Okay, my building width is this much. Now this becomes my internal portion. So in these multi-dual slope arrangement, what I have to do, I will have to provide some downtake pipes over here. Inside my building, I will have to provide some downtake pipes. Then I will have to create a drainage system. Okay. So even after that, in multi-dual slope system, whenever you inspect any multi-dual slope system, you will always find a problem of drainage. So that drainage issue is always seen in this type of an assembly. Even after providing proper slopes to our gutters, even after providing proper downtake pipes, you will always see this water drainage issue. So this system is not a very good system, but when you have large spans, this is what you have to do. All right. Is it clear? So water drainage is an issue, but you have to deal with it. Another type of multi-dual slope system that you might have seen, I don't know whether you have seen it or not. Another type of multi-dual slope system that you may have seen, I will just draw and you might tell me, someone of you can tell what is it called as. Have you seen this type of a system? These are my columns, 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 columns. Yes, have you seen this type of a system? Yes. So this is called as a north light truss. This is called as a north light system. Why do we call this as a north light? Because over here we will give some ventilation arrangement. So here there will be ventilation arrangements on this face, and this face points to the north direction. Okay. So what happens is, in the northern hemisphere, in the north hemisphere where we are, where our country is located, the sun starts from the east and sets in the west. So actually sun is not going anywhere. We are rotating, but it is a convenient way to put it this way, that the sun rises from the east, isn't it? And sets in the west. And usually it is not directly overhead, isn't it? The sun is not overhead. It is, I would say it is tilted southwards. Do you know this fact or not? I hope all of we know this, that the sun is tilted southwards in the north hemisphere. Okay. So because the sun is tilted southwards, what happens is that when you are facing the north, you will usually get a uniform light throughout the day. So if your any ventilation is in the north side, you will get a uniform light throughout the day. All right. If your ventilation is pointing in the south direction, what you will get, that in the mornings and the evenings you will get a direct sunlight, but in the daytime you will not get a uniform lighting. When you are in the north side, when your ventilation faces towards the north, you get a uniform light throughout the day. So what they do is, in the north light, the concept is that their ventilation will be in the north side, facing the north direction. So sun may be over here, southwards, but you will still get a uniform light throughout the day. Okay, so this is the concept behind north light sheds. Mr. Dheeraj is giving a good observation that usually in railway sheds you get this type of a assembly. Okay, in PEB people don't go for this north light systems. It becomes slightly more complicated, but this is a very efficient system for lighting. Anyway, so north light is another option. So till now we have discussed flat roofs. No, sorry, till now we have discussed dual slopes, mono slopes, multi-dual slopes. In flat roofs, what it will mean that my roof will be flat without any slope arrangement. This type of an assembly. This is usually when you have to have some flooring system at the top, and when that flooring system has to be on a flat surface, then we will give a flat roof. Okay. Otherwise, generally we will not give this flat roof assembly. Okay, so I think I will stop over here at this secondary structure at this point. Tomorrow we will continue from uh, this slide. Okay, so uh, today what we did, we just had a basic introduction of all these issues. Tomorrow we will continue with this presentation. There are good pictures that I will share it with you, and then we will try to understand what is the complete process of modeling, design, load application that we are going to follow. Okay, now all of you have also been added on our integrated portal. So if you want to watch the sessions online, as self-paced, or even if you want to attend live sessions and you also want to watch the sessions again for review and revision, what you can do is that all of you have been added on the portal. We will share the process required to watch the sessions online on the portal. We will share it on the group, so you can follow that process and you would be able to watch the sessions. Generally, the sessions would be uploaded by around 11:30 a.m. So for example, we complete our session at 10:15 a.m. So by 11:30 a.m., usually the session would be uploaded, and then it would be available for you to watch it online. Okay, the complete process to watch these sessions online, I will put it on the group. Okay, so this is all what we had to do today. We'll stop over here. Now if you have any questions, doubts, difficulties, you can ask. Mr. Sayyed had asked a question. I had ignored it that time because it was not relevant. He had asked that whether a person can walk. What was his question? Whether a person can. Yeah, whether a person can walk on EOT crane. Oh yes, of course. EOT crane can take 10 tons, 5 tons, 20 tons of load. So yes, of course, a person can walk. The question is whether a person should walk on EOT crane or not. Okay, because it can be dangerous. So a person can always walk on an EOT crane, but whether a person should walk, that is the question that you should have asked, isn't it? So there are some safety precautions that we have to take. Usually there are some walkways that we provide adjacent to our crane girders for inspection, etc. Okay. Okay, and there are some walkways given on the EOT crane as well. So a person should only walk over the inspection walkways. Yes. Any other point? Hello. Any other question? Okay, so we then stop over here. Tomorrow we will continue with this slide onwards. So that is all what we have for today. Thank you. and now we will see you at 8:30 a.m. tomorrow. So thank you. Have a good day, and we will see you tomorrow at 8:30. Thank you. Bye bye.